One final Deadlock balance patch in the Big 25, and it's chock-a-block full of buffs for many different characters, ranging from Bebop all the way through to Yamato. Let's deep dive into it and see what exactly Valve have shipped in the latest update, now officially the final balance patch for 2025. With 10 different heroes being selected to receive an array of varying buffs, it's obvious Valve have decided to shake up Deadlock's meta going into the New Year holiday break. As always, you're watching Patch Notice on Dead Air with your host, Jacky, and those amazing graphics that are made by Daisy that you've all thoroughly been enjoying. Let's get into it then and start off with our first hero, Bebop. The Scrap Golem has had his base stamina increased, going up from 2 bars to 3, meaning that you'll be able to navigate the Cursed Apple a bit quicker. Of course, with the resulting cooldown being slightly increased to balance things out. He's also getting more health per boon now, and that's going to go up substantially from plus 46 on a level up to 52. On top of that, this is the real meat and potatoes of the Bebop changes. Now, although you're going to see initially bomb damage has gone down from 100 to 75 at base, it's the scaling that you want to focus on. These numbers are going absolutely loco at the minute, with Bebop bomb builds being able to build up an insane amount of damage when investing into spirit heavy builds. You're going to be able to nuke down opponents fastly, peaking at like 1500 damage very early into the game, with only a bit of investment into spirit if you're able to farm those stacks. And of course you can keep building on top of that. That's just sort of the average damage I've been seeing right now in the games I've been playing. This is due to the changes on hero per hit and per hero kill, alongside that increase you're getting off the back of spirit scaling, meaning you're going to be doing far more damage as you increase your spirit build alongside finding stacks. There was also a weird bug when the patch first shipped, where players were able to debuff remove or divine barrier bombs off them but would still take damage. Thankfully, this was a bug, as it was pretty egregious and was patched out at some point last night. It's never been as lucrative to buy anti-Bebop items in lane as it is right now, so make sure you're investing in your debuff removers, your reactive barriers, and giving yourself the best chance possible up against this explosive Scrap Golem. Now, if you prefer more gun-oriented builds, this one might perk your interest. Grey Talon has had some changes that will lead players away from trap or spirit-oriented builds and possibly take them even further towards the dark side of Gun Talon. Rain of Arrows has had its cooldown reduced from 35 seconds to 30, alongside now giving you 30% bullet evasion on its tier 3 unlock. Pretty powerful stuff for keeping you in the sky, slamming players with arrows. Guided Owl also got some unexpected changes, with its duration now being 2 seconds longer at 18 seconds, its damage going up at tier 1 as well from plus 81 to plus 85, so an additional 4 damage there, and the spirit power per kill scaling has really leapt up massively, nearly doubling, going from 5 to 8, so make sure you're making the most of those owls. And that leads us on to our next hero, Holiday. Now, everyone's favourite cowgirl has actually had only 2 buffs inside of this patch, but by and large they are only outright buffs. Powder Keg has had its CD going down quite substantially. That cooldown's now gone down from 32 to 28 seconds. Now, I'm sure you'll know how powerful these powder kegs can be when they're punched in your face when Holiday's in mid-air and she gets those quick bursts of spirit damage off. This is going to be far more regular now. On top of that, it seems like Valve have identified it being a bug, allowing you to cancel Lasso's grab when using Divine Barrier. Didn't realise this one was a thing, but you can imagine that's going to be a pretty good way of escaping the CC of Holiday's ultimate. No longer will that be a possibility, seems far more balanced, as it's a bit crazy you could purge this off with just the Divine Barrier investment. But let's run on through the veil and see what they've changed with Ivy. Spanish Harlem's finest Gargoyle has received some interesting buffs inside of this patch, one of them potentially very unintended, as Watcher's Covenant has had a bit of an increase to replicated healing. This is also now going to be scaling per boon. But the more interesting fact is it should only be about a 10% increase, making it around double what it was in terms of the replicated healing you're getting. In reality, this is going far further than that, upwards of about 70% I've seen it seems like you're getting back. So if you're able to tether onto someone that's getting a healing nova off, a healing tempo, the amount of HP you're getting is ridiculous. At the time of recording, Valve haven't fixed it yet, but it definitely is a bug, so maybe make the most of that one whilst you still can. They've also tweaked the damage penalty for carrying an ally in airdrop as well, taking that down by 10%, possibly encouraging more players to start using airdrops functionality with teammates again. And here's Kelvin dropping in now, alongside some pretty out there buffs. Didn't expect these, but let's go through them. The first one is going to massively reduce your getaway potential when you're being slapped in the face by the tier 3 variant of Frost Grenade, as that AP investment will now reward you with stamina regen being reduced by 30% on hit for enemies. So if you're spamming these out in a fight, someone even with the reduced movement speed after last patch will now be even slower escaping Kelvin, meaning he can beam them to high hell. Don't know how I feel about that one, but I've never been the biggest fan of the Iceman's ability to just slap you in the face and grind you to a halt. Outside of that, they play around with the timings on Ice Path a little bit to give you a bit more room to play with. And from snow we arrive at sand, as it's Mo and Krill's time to shine, possibly receiving some very big buffs. Now, as much as these don't look too crazy when you look at them on the surface, they really are going to push him an extra mile in terms of viability, I think. It's Sandblast that I think needs to be focused on the most. Burrow had a couple changes, but it's not as important, apart from the adjacent connection that you can now cast Sandblast whilst you're burrowed, something you were never able to do previously. On top of that, you're going to have better cooldown reduction with his tier 2, you're slowing dash distance by upwards of 40%, and you're dealing a fixed 40 damage per hit of Sandblast. If you didn't know, it's also going to be stopping you from shooting back at Mo and Krill, or anyone on his team for that sake. So this really gives so much more viability and usability to Mo and Krill's kit. Watch out if you see Mo coming at you with those big sandy paws. Next though, Paradox drops back into the scene, with some pretty damn good changes if you enjoy gun carbine builds. Let's talk you through it. If you're a player like me that enjoys that feeling of getting a sick railgun shot off with Paradox's carbine, this is going to be the patch for you. You can have a look with the fact that kinetic carbine's cooldown has been massively reduced. Now, I know it's only a few seconds, but when you think about the fact 30 seconds, you could throw that out twice a minute. Now it's 27 seconds. That's before any CD reduction on top of it. This means that kinetic carbine can be off cooldown pretty bloody regularly now, giving you a lot of opportunities to smash players in the head. Carbine builds should be going through the roof with stocks at the minute off the back of this change, allowing you to deal so much damage, especially if you can get it off and have a good game where you're feeding yourself lots of souls, possibly glass cannon stacks as well. Yeah, watch out for kinetic carbine. On top of that, we've also had a minor buff to Time Wall. Now, I say minor, it's the difference of 0.5 meters on the actual size of the Time Wall, but this does effectively mean that Time Wall at its maximum size before any item investment should be able to cover effectively any gap or doorway in Deadlock, pretty much give or take around the map, so giving you a bit more potential there to block incoming fire for you and your teammates. But let's swap over from Paradox onto 7. The good times keep on rolling for ball build enjoyers as 7's big balls keep on getting even bigger. Lightning Ball's tier 3 has gone up from +1 meters to +1.5, giving you a bit more range and size to play with. On top of that, Power Surge has actually been nerfed somewhat. More so a rebalance than an exaggerated nerf though, taking down that Spirit Resist from -15% over 8 seconds to instead a more reasonable -10% over 6 seconds, especially when you then factor in the rest of the buffs that 7's received inside of this buff update. It kinda kinda goes hand in hand with making sense. Storm Cloud is now going to be doing a decent amount more damage. You'll be able to slightly chase foes to get kills a little bit more easier, with that move speed going up substantially, nearly doubling from 2.5 to 3.8, alongside his tier 3 base DPS also being upped from plus 54 to plus 65, and his Storm Cloud DPS outright goes up by 5 DPS as well, from 90 to 95. So 7 has more ball damage, slightly worse power surge builds, only slightly, and a whole lot better damage output with his ult. Maybe we're going to see more ult builds once again with play around diving objectives. Who knows, but probably a good time to be a 7 main off the back of this one. Let's slide down the stairs to the subway though and check out what the magnificent Henry's up to, aka Sinclair. Now, Sinclair's had quite a lot of changes in this patch. Overall, his spirit scaling has been flat out increased as well by a decent chunk there, but these are the more interesting ones. Vexing Bolt has effectively had its overall functionality of usage change, operating a bit more like Wraith's cards now, where it can lock on to targets on its redirect rather than being a free cast where you press the spell again to redirect it to a different target. It seems a little bit inconsistent at the minute, so play around with it, but overall it does seem like a better direction to go for making this character more viable and opening up more players to try him, as he's incredibly strong, but people seem a bit off-put about the complexities of his kit. Now, Rabbit Hex, this one's crazy. Already you would have seen tons of Sinclairs going Rabbit Hex build where they're punching in the back of the head and dealing so much damage. Well, their radius is bigger, the cooldown is quicker, so yeah, watch out for Rabbit Hexes galore. And for my next trick, I'll pull a Yamato out of a hat. A recently buffed Yamato, with some changes I actually really agree with. Now, there's been a bit of a rebalance on the flat base damage increase you're going to be getting from a tier 3 AP investment on Power Slash, but you're going to have more spirit scaling to play with, which is going to be far better to work with. That spirit power scaling has been upped by 0.5, which is pretty decent. On top of that, you're getting more HP per kill when inside of her Shadow Transformation ultimate as well. Both of these lead me to think that Valve wants you to make the most of her kit in terms of grappling into fights, using Shadow Transformation when there is a reason to self-sustain inside of a big fight, and using Power Slash for more bursts of damage, rather than relying too heavily on just her ult fire or gun Yamato, which does still pop up from time to time. I think this will be good for the general Yamato population out there. That's basically everything in tonight's patch though, the last Deadlock balance patch, I'd imagine, finally, for this year, before we head into 2026. What do you think of the changes? It seems like Valve want to spice up the meta a little bit over the next few days, where they most likely will be out of office for New Year's. Happy New Year's, by the way, guys. Hopefully you have a great one, and we'll see you back with even more Dead Air content here into 2026.